Hello everyone, welcome back. Today we are going over the severe weather outbreak that is likely today in parts of Illinois, Missouri, Kansas, Arkansas, Oklahoma, and Texas. This also does include a little sliver of Kentucky. And this is an enhanced risk, so that is a 3 out of 5. And this does include a 10% tornado risk with a 10% significant tornado risk. So that is a 10% risk for tornadoes within 25 miles of any given location. And there's also a 10% risk for a significant tornado, which is EF2 and higher. Some places that are included in this 10% significant tornado area, that includes Tulsa, Oklahoma, St. Louis, Missouri, Springfield, Missouri, Columbia, Missouri, Broken Arrow, Arkansas, and Joplin, Missouri is also in this. Alright, and we also have a 5% tornado risk surrounding that, which includes Oklahoma City, Kansas City, Missouri, Cincinnati, Ohio, Louisville, Kentucky, Indianapolis, Indiana, and then there is an even bigger 2% tornado risk which surrounds that, and that includes Dallas, Waco, Austin, San Antonio, and that also includes Arlington, Texas, Fort Worth, and all those areas. Alright, there's also a 30% wind risk in this enhanced risk, and that includes Tulsa, Oklahoma, St. Louis, Missouri, Louisville, Kentucky, Springfield, Missouri, and Evansville, Indiana. This, at this time, is not a significant threat, but it could be upgraded. There's also a very large significant hail risk, and there's also a 30% significant hail risk as well. So the significant hail risk area does include San Antonio, Dallas, Texas, Austin, Texas, Fort Worth, and Oklahoma City, which is going to be some very large hail. So that's baseball-sized hail, possibly even larger than that. And there is also the 30% risk, which includes Dallas, Fort Worth, Oklahoma City, Arlington, Texas, and Tulsa, Oklahoma. Does also include Jefferson City in Missouri, and there's also a 15% hail risk which surrounds that 30% hail risk, which some of that is also a significant threat. So that includes Waco, Austin, Wichita Falls, Kansas City, and Springfield, Illinois. That is also a risk for significant hail. Alright, and for tomorrow, which will be April 2nd, there's also an enhanced risk of severe weather, which is a 3 out of 5. This also includes a 10% tornado risk, not significant at this time, but we will watch for an upgrade. But this is a 10% risk of tornadoes within 25 miles of any given location. And this does include Nashville, Tennessee, Murfreesboro, Tennessee, Franklin, Tennessee, Hendersonville, Tennessee, and Smyrna, Tennessee. There's also a 5% risk surrounding that, which does include Louisville, Kentucky, Bowling Green, Clarksville, Tennessee, Decatur, Alabama, Huntsville, Alabama, and Lexington, Kentucky. There also is a 2% risk of tornadoes surrounding that area, which I could see possibly a couple cells or a line of storms form with the risk for embedded tornadoes in that, and that includes Birmingham, Alabama, Jackson, Tennessee, and we just got an update here. Alright, and that includes Charleston, West Virginia, Cincinnati, Ohio, and Evansville. So we will watch for some slight spin-ups in that 2% risk. There's also a 30% wind risk, which includes Nashville, Louisville, Kentucky, Lexington, Kentucky, Huntsville, Alabama, and Clarksville, Tennessee. This is not a significant threat at this time, but we will also be watching for upgrades. There's also a 15% hail risk, which does include Nashville, Bowling Green, Evansville, Louisville, Kentucky, Cincinnati, Ohio, Jackson, Tennessee, Memphis, Tennessee, and Birmingham, Alabama. There's also a marginal risk of severe weather, which is a 1 out of 5 on day 3, which will be April 3rd. And this does include Orlando, Tampa, Melbourne, and it's very close to Jacksonville, but it does not include Jacksonville. And then this also includes Baltimore, Maryland, Washington, D.C., Richmond, Virginia, Raleigh, North Carolina, and Wilmington, North Carolina. As of now, this is just a 5% risk of severe weather, but I do believe there will be a small 2% risk for tornadoes in Florida and possibly parts of Virginia and Delaware. The other thing I do want to mention about today's severe weather, there is a slight risk of flash flooding, so that's at least a 15% risk for flash flooding. That includes Cincinnati, Ohio, Louisville, Kentucky, Indianapolis, Indiana, St. Louis, Illinois, and this also does include St. Louis, Missouri, and Jefferson City, Missouri. There's also a slight risk of flash floods on day 2, which is April 2nd, and this is in the Appalachian Mountains, and this does include Charleston, West Virginia, and Knoxville, Tennessee. So that slight risk means at least a 15% risk of flash flooding, and that green area, which is the marginal, is at least a 5% risk for flash flooding. Alright, so today, we're going to go over today's models. We are using the short-range models now that we are that close to the severe weather event that we can use the short-range models. So this is the HRRR starting off at 11 a.m. on April 1st. And as we can see, we get some of those storms that start to initiate in parts of Kansas and North Oklahoma, and then possibly some more storms that start to initiate in Texas and Central Oklahoma as well. That then does try to congeal into a line of storms, but that is as far as we can go on the HRRR. So we will be switching over to the NAM 3 kilometer, which is, sorry about that. We are starting it off at 11 a.m. here on April 1st, and also getting those storms to start initiating in parts of Oklahoma, Texas, and Kansas. That does eventually try to congeal into a line of storms, which can produce embedded strong tornadoes, large hail, and very strong damaging winds. Alright, and now we're going to switch it over so we can get a better view of this up in Illinois and Missouri and parts of Kentucky and Ohio as well. And there's our line of storms, and we will see it start to die down, I do believe, towards tonight and the early morning hours of April 2nd, which is tomorrow. Now we could have another line of storms try to fire up in Kentucky and Ohio as well. Alright, now we're going to switch it to the southeast, where for that day 2 and day 3 area the day 2 area and the day 3 area severe weather risk is. And here we will start it off, and there's that line of storms trying to form, with possible supercells in it and possibly even out in front of it. I do believe it will be still on the weaker side, but there still will be a threat for some damaging winds and tornadoes as well. Here are today's the dew points today. So this is helping with these severe storms. And so we do have the dew points in Texas and Oklahoma in the low 70s and to the upper 60s, and all the way up into Missouri and Illinois, up into the mid 60s to lower 60s. So that's definitely enough to help with those severe storms. We'll have that surge of cold air behind that cold front. And now we're on the Euro model, which we will be looking at the mid to lower level jet for today and tomorrow. And if we get this started, we do have a lower to mid-level jet of around 80 to 90 knots, which is very supportive for tornadoes. And once again, keep going, and it's still into the 80s and 90s. So that is going to support for tornadoes. Shift over here to the northern area. So this is going to be Kentucky and the Ohio Valley. And we will see that lower level to mid-level jet start to ramp up 60 to 80 knots in parts of Illinois and Missouri, possibly a couple pockets of near 90 knots, but I do think it will be on the slightly lower side. And then when that line of storms tries to form, got 80 to almost 100 knots, so that is going to be very supportive for embedded tornadoes as well. Yeah, so there that is again, 80 to 90 knots and parts of Missouri and Oklahoma as well. And I'm going to actually switch over, do this real quick, sorry about that, and do it here for the southeast. And yeah, that's when that line of storms trying to form, 120 knot mid to low level jet. So that's going to be very supportive for strong winds. And I mean, they're down in the Savannah area, that's 100 knots at least. And then if you go down around Jacksonville, that's still 80, 90 knots. So that's going to be very supportive for severe storms. Alright, and last we have the Icon model, which is a short to mid-range model, and we will, there it is, trying to get that line of storms, with the storms also in Illinois, Ohio, and Indiana as well. And then there's that line of storms going through the southeast and through the Carolinas and Virginia and parts of Florida as well. So I do think this line will have the risk for some embedded tornadoes and some damaging winds. I do think the hail side of this for the southeast area will be on the lower end, but still could get some smaller hail in some of those storms. Alright, that is all I have for y'all today. Check back in for updates, and just keep your alerts on and pay attention to the weather. Alright, y'all have a good one.